welcome to a Minecraft video. My name is Afflix and today we are going to be undertaking a building project, hopefully meshing together organics and structures into one build. Now, but before we begin, I have something to admit to you. This isn't exactly a new world. Yep, I've been building on this world for about 3 weeks and I just thought I'd rather start from the middle and work my way to the end. So, what are we going to be building today? So as you can see, I have a distinct theme going on with my base. The idea that I have for my base is I want to have an old castle, as you can see, with the moss and the stone on the bottom layers, and it's been built on top of by a new castle, which is these kind of white colors here. Now, I've been working on this style, and it's probably my first time doing it. I wanted to make another building to kind of make a more surrounding castle. And for that, we're going to be building another tower. And where are we going to put it? Right here. The idea for this one is it's going to be it's going to be one of the old towers. Except the only reason that it's stayed up is because it's going to have a giant tree weaving through it, keeping it upright. I'm going to talk through how I'm going to work this out. And hopefully you're listening along the way too. So, without further ado, I'd say it's time to collect some resources. Okay, so after a lot of resource gathering, we have landed on the materials that we're going to be using to start this build. So what we have is one full shulker of stone and andesite and cobblestone. That's going to be our main body for the whole build, and we're going to be turning some of this into stone bricks later when we need it. We have a lot of moss that we're going to be using for the moss gradient up from the bottom, and a whole bunch of tuff. This will make it darker, we'll use this for shading, it'll be great. And then we have all these logs. These are going to be used to work on the trunk of the tree and all that. And then finally we have a shulker with 3 different types of leaves. We're going to be using these leaves to create a gradient in the tree because they're kind of go from light to dark. So yeah, we're hopefully going to be using these. I really hope that I won't be using every single one of these resources. I hope I don't run out of any of them because it took me a while to get, but also I kind of wanted just to have a stockpile for the future. If you want to build something on this scale, don't expect to use this much resources. But without further ado, let's get into the building process. So the first step to doing any build is planning. And a really simple way just to get started is to just kind of mark out where you want everything to go. You can do this with wool, or what I'm doing is I'm using the actual blocks that are mainly going to be taking up the build itself. For this, I'm using a circle design, which I have used on a lot of my other castles, but this is a really handy one. It is an 11 by 11 circle, really, really simple to make, really easy to memorize. It's just a 3, a 2, a 1, a 2, 3, a 2, a 1. It's really, really simple. planning out a space for where your organics are going to go is quite different to planning out a space for where you want your structures to go. For this, I'm doing a tree, and I've had the idea that I want to kind of have 2 or 3 maybe trunks that are going to come out of the ground and connect to form the main trunk of the tree. Now, for this, you just kind of place blocks. Don't really think too much about where you want them to go. We have 2 on the corners here, so I'm going to finish the other corner off over here, unlike with the circle here, which is very accurate and supposed to be very linear and realistic to how a building would be formed. So with these 3 here, I can decide how is this going to connect up to the top, and if this scale is too big or too small. Right now, I don't think it's big enough, so I'm going to go ahead and expand these trunks. Okay, so now that we have a little bit of planning done, we can see how it sits on the land, and if we really like what we're seeing. Now, I've got the trunks to about the size where I think they fit the build very nicely. They don't completely overpower it, but they do make it feel smaller. And we do want the tree kind of dominating this structure. Okay, so the lore behind this building is, as I've said before, it's the last old building left from this old castle. These trees are the only thing keeping it up, but more than just being the only thing they're keeping it up, it's the fact that they're too big for these new castle people, the White Castle. The tree was too big for them to simply chop the tree down. I kind of want to show that by showing how it's integral to the structure's support. Okay, so now we want to start planning a few little things like entrances and all that kind of thing. But you might be thinking, which do I build first? If I'm building something like this, which do I start with? And I would say you always want to start in the middle and work your way out. So we're going to be starting with the castle. And you could say, oh, you kind of want to start with the one that you think is harder. It would be a struggle if I built branches over my head and I'm trying to build this castle. But I feel like it would be easier just to build up most of the castle and then make different changes by the end. Okay, I might have got a little bit carried away and built like half the tower, but it's fine because I'll just talk about the things that I did now instead. This tower is very similar at the base to the other ones that I'd built. I mentioned before it's an 11 by 11 circle, and I just used moss around the bottom, going up a few more blocks than I usually would on the other towers, because this is supposed to be very old, and I might even drag the moss a little bit higher. I kept it pretty simple, and I made it go about 10 blocks up in the air. Using the mossy cobblestone and the mossy dome brick is a very nice gradient. As you can see, I came in 1 block here to make a square shape. Now that is because I think it gives a very nice shape, and we'll just take a fly about here. I want it to look similar to the other towers, but different, and not only in color, so I decided I would make a bit of an ornate shape to go on the top. So yeah, that's how I came across this design. Another thing that you might notice is that I used tuff just underneath these slabs here. It kind of makes it feel like they're casting a shadow down onto the building below. Now another detail that we want to add here is I've decided to do this on all the towers so far, and that's because it gives it a very slightly round shape. It gives it the very important depth that it is often lacking. So we will just pop in a few of these just as a bit of detail. And a lot of this will probably be covered up by the tree that we're going to be building later. But we're not going to concern ourselves with that now. We're just going to focus solely on the tower. While I was taking a fly about, I realized that the wall was looking quite flat on this big stretch here. And although we can vary this somewhat with different textures and breaking it up at the bottom, I felt what we really needed was to add a bit of a gutter here. Now I'm just using some stairs And it's really simple way to break up the build a little bit into a few different sections. I have done this in a lot of places, as you can see up there towards the top of my buildings. I like to add a little bit of a gully there. It creates a kind of solid line, and hopefully this will turn out similarly on this build. Already, just with those few little details, you can see how much depth it's adding to the build. Try to make sure that you're not just building blank walls, but that you're adding depth and character to it as well. So now I think I'm going to keep going and finish the ornate pattern that I was making and copy that around on all four sides. Adding tough in behind this kind of pattern makes the pattern stand out more because it's set on a darker background. If we made this into stone, for example, then it would probably just blend in with the stone and you wouldn't really be able to see the pattern. So that's pretty much why we're doing this. Also, resetting the palette means that I don't have to go up into even lighter colors, like moving into the kind of diorite shades there. So now, I'm just going to finish filling in this pattern here, and we'll see how we're looking. Now we have finished extending the tower up, and I can see that it is definitely coming into its own now. It looks very distinctly different from these other towers, and I think it's time we cap it off just at the top. But first, I think we could add even just a little bit of texture through moss and mossy cobblestone. I have to admit, I'm running a lot lower on tough than I would have liked. But that's okay, because we're not going to be using any more of it. Okay, so pretty simple. We're just going to break a couple of the blocks here and throw in a little bit of an accent of moss, which will help make the building feel old, because we don't want it looking new. These buildings are supposed to look really new. But I think that that color is just about right. I might even bring this down just a little bit and throw in a couple of blocks here. So we'll just do the same for the other sides and it'll be good. Well, there's something. And with that, we have completely capped off the tower. I think it is looking absolutely great. I don't know about you guys, but this is probably one of my favorite towers that I've done. There's a bit of a two-tone with the design as well as the border I threw onto it. So next off is to start working on the tree. Now, I have to say, this tower turned out a little bit taller than I was expecting. So this tree is gonna have to be absolutely gigantic. Either way, I think the tree is definitely gonna add to it, add to the lore, because that's what this is about, right? It's about creating a story with the build. It is a little bit dangerous right now. I think there's a hello, bit of a skeleton up there. Other than that, the tower is pretty much finished. Now we're gonna start construction on the tree. And I think whenever you're building a big organic, you want to give it precedence over the structure in pretty much all cases. This is why we built the structure first, so that we can weave the organic around it. And what we're going to be doing in a lot of cases is just kind of poking holes through. So we're going to be making a few holes. I did see a few skeletons up here a minute ago, but they seem to have been gone now, so that's a relief. So we have 3 different stems that we're going to be drawing from, and I just want them to kind of rise up. I built the ones over there. This is just going to be a giant version of that. Just way, way, way bigger. Okay, so I have gone ahead and added in all the branches that we're going to be using on this tree slash tower thing. And as you can see, it looks a little bit strange right now. Looks a bit like a skeleton, a bit of an empty husk. But that will all be cleared up when we add in all the leaves. I did bring the trunk up through the center, and that helped me to branch off the branches and just to organize them a little bit better. I decided not to make the tree go high above the tower because I felt like it would just overscale the whole build completely, and I wanted to keep the tower as the main focus point. So now let's get into placing the leaves. After a very short few hours, I have gone and put all the leaves on the tree, and I think it is looking just great. I really like how the tree bends up and leaves a space for the tower to shine in the center. I think it really adds on to the whole base, framing it really nicely. I think that the gradient I've used going from dark to light on the leaves works very well. So a few techniques I used with the leaves is, well, firstly I went and I placed them just in kind of rings. You can see that they're clumped together where the branches were, and that helped me to map out where I wanted to put the leaves. It also helps, once you've finished placing down the leaves, to break a few holes in them to make it feel more airy. This wouldn't really be a necessity, except for the fact that Minecraft does this very strange thing, where when you're far away, I don't know if you can tell this, but all the leaves are opaque, but the closer you get, you can see through them. So that kind of messes with the textures, where it only really looks good if you're kind of close up. by breaking a few holes in the leaves, you get a very nice feeling of air even when they're opaque from far away. So now that we've finished the main structure and the tree, you'd think we're finished, right? But no, we still have a few more things to get up to, and that just takes its form in the terraforming and the interior and the interior of the build. Oh god. Okay. Um so I'll get started on the terraforming then. I have now added the finishing touches to the terrain on this build, and I think it has just taken shape absolutely wonderfully. I think I will just show off what I've done with a bit of FreeCam here. If you don't know what FreeCam is, it's a mod which allows you to kind of go into a spectator mode type of situation, and I'm just using it to show off my builds a little bit better. This just also gives a very clear view of how the base is laid out, all the way from the wheat island over there to the two towers, all the way through here. So as you can see, here is the tower, and we have the leaves wrapping around wonderfully, framing it very nicely. Now, in terms of the terraforming, which I was talking about, we have done this cliff right here. The gradient here with the cobblestone andesite and stone really adds a lot of texture to the build, and it carries these grey pallets up here from the riverbed. And I also mixed in a bit of rooted dirt and coarse dirt, as well as some moss around, just to make it feel a bit more overgrown. In terms of the path here, I just carried along same exact design as I did for this one, which is just the dirt, coarse dirt, packed mud, and it's a very simple design. And also another thing you might notice, in this section of the base there's a lot of yellow hues, and I wanted to kind of bring those up without putting any sand up here. So what I decided to do was bring a lot of yellow and orange flowers up here, just to border the path. I also built this wall, which was just an exact replica of this one here. Overall, that pretty much finishes off the build. I think it's added a lot of life and scale to the base. It's one of my favorite towers, and I really hope that you have enjoyed watching me build it as much as I've enjoyed building it myself. With that, that concludes this episode, if I'm to make this a series of building. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a like, subscribe, tell me what to do in the comments. I'm very much looking forward to hearing any thoughts you have, anything you'd like to see me build in the future, what I can improve, and anything really. So, with that, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.